Hello, my name is S.K. Williams, and happy Pentecost! Today is Pentecost, at least in the West, the day that we set aside to commemorate the creation of the church, 40 days after Jesus Christ ascended to heaven. When flames of fire sat upon the heads of the apostles, and they spoke, and anyone in any language could understand them, and they converted thousands in a single day. This was the fulfillment of the prophecy given by Jesus upon his entry into Jerusalem, when his disciples asked him when a sign of the end of the age would be and when his kingdom would come. Of course, today that is used as a false prophecy, and Jesus is called a failed apocalyptic prophet because it's interpreted to be the disciples asking Jesus when the end times and the second coming would be. But you have to keep in mind, the disciples didn't actually know Jesus was going to be crucified. And yet, according to this interpretation, they're asking Jesus when his second coming would be, as if they expected him to have a second coming. In reality, they didn't expect him to have a second coming, and it makes no sense for them to ask him, when will your second coming be? They were actually talking about when the age they were in would end, and when Jesus would be revealed to be the Messiah and build his kingdom, which they expected to be an earthly kingdom. They expected Jesus to raise up an army and remove the Romans who ruled them and perhaps conquer an empire of his own. They expected worldly domination. And this was the mistake made by the Pharisees and Sadducees. They wanted an earthly king, and what they got was a heavenly Messiah. They wanted a king who conquered their enemies like the Romans and built a physical earthly empire, something like a Caesar only for Israel. And what they got was a conqueror of death and hell. They got a metaphysical ruler whose kingdom would be established and would see no end. But it wouldn't be a kingdom of this earth. And that's ironic because a lot of evangelicals also think of Jesus as an earthly kingdom, that at his second coming he will return to build his kingdom on earth. To them, the church is not the kingdom. We live in the church age, and the church is here and besieged by the gates of hell and must withstand it, winning souls over until Jesus comes to build his kingdom. Regrettably, this particular theology actually validates the atheist argument. For if the prophecy given in Matthew 24 and also in Mark and Luke were indeed about the end times and the second coming, they argue that Jesus said it would happen within the lifetime of the disciples, and it didn't. But it did happen in the lifetime of the disciples. The church is not some separate institution from the kingdom. It is the kingdom of Christ. And upon this day, upon Pentecost, we are celebrating the creation of the kingdom of Christ on earth, the church. We are not awaiting a second coming for Jesus to build his kingdom. Now, bear in mind, I'm not saying that the second coming won't happen. A lot of people have so bundled the creation of the kingdom with the second coming that they think when it is argued that the kingdom is already here and it's the church and it was founded on Pentecost, that means that the second coming happened then. I actually heard a recording of Herbert Armstrong, the founder of the Worldwide Church of God, and ostentatiously the various branches that started after his death, say that there are people who think the second coming already happened in a spiritual way, and that's not what's really being discussed. Rather, traditionally, Christians did not equate the kingdom of Christ with the second coming. That really only begins around the 19th century with dispensationalism. But the traditional Christian beliefs were that the church was the kingdom of Christ on earth. The kingdom has already been established. The victory has already been won. And in fact, you will see verses in the Bible that would confirm this. And if you look at the Church Fathers, you will see that they never speak of a coming kingdom. They do speak of Jesus Christ returning, but they don't speak of a future kingdom. Although many in modern academia claim that the earliest of Church Fathers were millenarians awaiting the second coming to bring about the kingdom, this really does seem to be a desire to read that into them, as if the partial preterist position, as we call it now, was invented later. But I've come not to trust modern academia with its biases. It starts with the premise that Christianity is wrong and evolved over time and its earlier stages were different, and then looks for ways to make that so. But therein lies the point. We don't really celebrate Pentecost these days. Pentecost is a holiday that has fallen by the wayside. And this, I think, is tragic. I honestly think that we need to bring Pentecost back. We need to bring Christian culture back. Because right now, we don't really have a neutral culture that's neutral toward religion. We have a secular culture. And that secular culture is not neutral towards religion. It is a religion in its own right that seeks to impose itself. But one that claims to be neutral, whilst giving us a list of secular values we must adhere to, and saying that we can follow our religion unless it conflicts with these secular values, and then we must lay our religion aside and agree with the secular. And if we don't, it's always the fault of the religious. It's not a disagreement between two parties. The religious are just being irrational. And it's all ridiculous when you think about it. They don't give a reason to accept those secular values. And those secular values are wrong more times than they're right. Though you can find them in the various secular humanist manifestos, and I mean all of them. They don't really supersede one or the other like they say they do. But just keep in mind, today the kingdom of Christ was founded, and it shall never perish. It was made without hands. And the prophecy was fulfilled. I don't have much else to say, though I will do another Pentecost video for Eastern Orthodox. I celebrated the Orthodox calendar's version of Lent this year due to a problem with my scheduling, but as such, I feel that I should honor the Pentecost of the East rather than the West. And that will be my primary talk on this topic, where I go over the same material I spoke of here, but in greater detail. But until then, I shall take my leave of you now. Thank you. God bless, and goodbye.